Okay, sorry. Now we're recording, everyone. I apologize. Now I'm going to share my screen again. Oh. Okay, now I have to present this to you again. Okay, here we are. So this is the Mary Magdalene bowl. And you're just rubbing some oils on your hands. And I'm going to get you to inhale, close your eyes, and drop into the womb space as you inhale. Like almost imagine those molecules of oil, although they go to the brain. I just want you to imagine that you're inhaling them all the way into your womb space or your hara if you're not a female. And as you're inhaling, I'm just going to play, and I just want you to also inhale the vibrations of this bowl. Although it's on a computer, it's not going to translate the same way, but we'll do our best. So just know that this vibrates to Mary Magdalene energy, and I just invite you to drink in or breathe in the vibrations. Just take one more deep breath in, and as you breathe in, collect all that breath and then hold it at the top. Collecting in anything that is no longer serving you today, and then blow it out of your mouth like a shaman. Do that one more time. So inhale all the way into the womb, collecting all that energy, and then blow it out of your mouth. Beautiful. Bring your hands in through prayer at the heart center. Mary Magdalene resonates to the vibration of the heart, and from that vibration of your own heart, I just want you to mentally call her in. And all you do is, it could just be a feeling invitation into your heart, or you can mentally say, I activate Mary Magdalene energy now, or please come hang out with us, like whatever works for you. And then when you feel ready, just maybe clapping your hands, bringing you to a state of greater physical awareness. How, Brandy, because you're not muted, how did that sound go? Did it come through?
It kind of got a little bit in and out.
Right. So powerful.
But,
yeah.
But we just have to trust that even if it's wonky that way, the energy is still coming to us in the way that we need to receive it.
Of course. Okay, so so we have the Mary Magdalene story. I won't unmute you, Sarah. We have the Mary Magdalene story that we've been told. This is another questioning the narrative. Why have you been told you can't ask for what you want? Like this is the theme I'm noticing that Brandy and I didn't plan on. It's like, so there's the Mary Magdalene story that in the mainstream narrative. Oopsie. What is happening right now? That's not what I wanted. I don't know how to go backwards on these. Oh boy. Sorry guys. Okay. So this is Google and I don't get it. But anyway, that's fine. Oh, there, now I see it. It'll just come up on the bottom. Okay, we're good. So there's the story, in mainstream about how, they kind of portray her as a prostitute. She kind of seems beneath Jesus. As far as I think, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure they took her out of the painting of the Last Supper. when she was actually present at the Last Supper. So there's been this theme of erasure or trying to get rid of this powerful female. And the reason that is, I found out many years later after being raised Catholic and gone to Catholic school, what I found out is Mary Magdalene, this is why we're bringing her through now, is Mary Magdalene, it is said, was actually a descendant of Isis. So at the time, there were these cult of Isis temples. They were practicing sacred sexuality. It was an incredibly spiritual, tantric, I don't even know why they called it a cult, but they called it a cult. Anyway, she was part of that. And what was that, Brandy?
Mystery schools.
Yeah, we'll call them mystery schools. Sure, absolutely. And so Mary Magdalene and Jesus, I forget how they met, doesn't really matter. But Jesus was basically coming to her for spiritual advice. She was like a spiritual advisor to Jesus. She taught Jesus basically the energy methods my mom's talking about. Basically, Mary Magdalene would have taught that to Jesus. Jesus was also birthed from Mother Mary, who was also in the cult of Isis. She was so revered in the cult of Isis, they actually considered her the embodiment of Isis, which was very rare. So Mother Mary was a high priestess, the embodiment of Isis. And so Jesus already was kind of born into this culture and this mentality. And so him and Mary had a very equal relationship, I feel like. I feel like she was a guide to him, and they were unionized both physically and spiritually. So they were very intimate with each other. And I think they both had the mission to raise consciousness on this planet. There's a reason Jesus threw tantrums in a temple. There's a reason he was up against the political systems. There's a reason Pontius Pilate, had an issue with him. Like, this guy was probably a whistleblower. He also didn't, he was, Judaism would have been they say the religion he would have followed, but he didn't follow it. He was going against it. So, I find it very ironic that there's so much religion around him now, because he would probably roll over laughing at the structure of it, because I think he was one to go into those liminal spaces. And I think Mary Magdalene taught him a lot of that. Or they were just in alignment that way. So let's look at Mary Magdalene and the prostitute. So this is where we get stereotype versus archetype. So Mary Magdalene, the archetype, I think Brandy's going to go into more, is she is this woman of the shadows. She lived on the edge, the fringe. She was like a fringe goddess, I'm going to call her. And she's sort of in the shadows, and she's a freaking powerhouse. That's why she's in the shadows. So this is a sovereign woman who was totally in her own power. And yeah, I mean, her energy is like edgy. Like when I call her in, I feel this edginess and this like bravery. That's why I say valor. And I feel this power, but she's also so heart-centered, which, like I said, Brandy's going to talk about that. So prostitutes, let's look at that general, why would she have then been labeled that? Well, we don't actually know. I don't know. In my research, I haven't come across this, how prostitutes were viewed then. Like I really only have now to go on, and the 1800s in which I'm writing the novel on. So in the 1800s, prostitutes were actually more respected than they are now. And it wasn't run by pimps, it was run by women. So it was like women's stuff. I don't know, it felt more powerful in the 1800s. with Mary Magdalene, perhaps it was because she was in the cult of Isis that they labeled her a prostitute when in fact she was actually sexually empowered. But let's just look at that, and prostitutes are not just victims or exploiters, but they can be looked at as owning themselves. So it's about changing the narrative around prostitution and virgins, and I'm not discounting that nowadays there are women sex trafficking and all that. I'm not diminishing that, and that is not the empowered state I'm referring to. But I've worked with the prostitute archetype, and it's this, it can be this in-between space. This is a woman who owns herself, owns her sexuality, can, you know, make money how she sees fit. Like if we're taking it just in the light aspect of the prostitute, okay, this is, like I said, this isn't the slavery aspect I'm referring to. And my question for all of you this week is to go into the prostitute versus the sacred prostitute and really ask yourself, where are you selling yourself short? Where are you giving it away and then not filling your own cup? So that would be the shadow aspect of the prostitute. Like just give, and then never receive. The sacred prostitute, though, is a woman who owns herself. So again, you can ask yourself that question too. How am I owning my own power? In what aspects of my life am I a sovereign woman, making money how I see fit, washing my hands how I see fit? Like those kind of things is sort of the sacred prostitute. Am I using my sexuality in the highest vibration? And I'm going to tell you, you can. And you can even use your sexuality. Obviously, there's sex magic and stuff. You can use your sexuality to enhance a new level of spirituality by calling up those energies of pleasure all the way up into the manifestation realms. And this, the reason the prostitute, or the sacred prostitute, I'm going to say, because Ishtar called herself a sacred prostitute. I'm going to say that liminal space where women live on the edge there, like Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary and that cult of Isis, they were living on the edge and the fringe, and that is incredibly threatening to society because women are incredibly powerful. And if we own ourselves and have received the knowledge of pussy power, then, oh yes, Colette, I will, thank you. So if we have the knowledge of pussy power, that makes us a threat because we are in connection with our own power and our own authority and sovereignty. So liminal space. Liminal is the space in between things. It's the not this, but not that. Colette, I find Métis is an example of liminal. They're not white, they're not accepted into white culture, but they're not 100% accepted into First Nations either. Like they're in this liminal. Transgender, totally liminal, right? Not quite this, not quite that, right? And how much do have Métis in the past, definitely transgender now, how much does that make people uncomfortable? Huh? Yeah, so uncomfortable. I'm seeing you nodding. Like that is sort of what Mary Magdalene, how she rubbed up against society. Women in power at that time were not looked upon as, you know, anything good. So that's where I want to bring in Martha. So Martha was, I don't know a whole lot, maybe Colette, you know, got down and dirty with the Bible a little more than I did. Yeah, Colette, it's like you don't fit in anywhere, or you fit in everywhere. Like, which either way makes people uncomfortable. So, what was I gonna say now? Oh, Martha. So Martha is in the Bible. Now, Martha is in that story, and I think she's in more, but she's that sort of good girl archetype, I find, and please correct me if I'm wrong. But she is the one who was doing all the busy domestic work in one of the Bible stories. And she was cleaning up for Jesus or something, like, you know, dusting and cleaning and whatever. And Mary Magdalene was present with Jesus and she was washing his feet. And I think there was, I can't remember exactly, but there was some sort of discrepancy between the two. And oh no, it was the other way around. Was it Mary Magdalene doing all the cleaning and stuff? And Martha was, I'm trying to remember. Brandy, is that you looking it up?
Yeah.
It might be. I don't remember what part of the Bible Colette. Anyway, now I need to know who it was, but one of them was doing the busy work and one of them was washing Jesus' feet, and it came out like, yeah, you probably have Colette blocked it out. That's funny. So one of them was, so the whole point of the story is that the one who was present with Jesus was present with the divine. And the other one was so busy cleaning up that they weren't even connecting to the divine. And I think, Mom, you know, with your like challenge with connecting, I think that's a good story. It's like, where are we distracting ourselves from being present with the divine? And where do we think we're, you know, like, think about, you know, you go to church on Sunday, like this is old paradigm stuff. You go to church on Sunday, you do confession, then you can have the host only if you have confession, only if some, you know, big wig has cleared your name to be able to eat the body of Christ. Yes, of course she did, because she was freaking rich, you know, like, yeah, Colette just said like she cleaned Jesus' feet with her oils and her most expensive perfume. Of course she did, because like abundance. And yeah, so asking ourselves, where are we distracting ourselves from the divine, or how do we expect it to show up, you know? So that is that. And so I'm going to say, I'm going with Mary Magdalene was a freaking priestess, okay? And then the rest of the story, from a channeled perspective, not from the Bible. Oh, even the Divine Feminine deck, I totally disagree with her writing on Mary Magdalene, which this is the card. I totally disagree with the description, because she talks about, basically it's like Jesus put the power in her to be able to witness his resurrection. And I thought, no, I think she taught him everything he knew. You know, so the fact that she witnessed his resurrection tells you what kind of relationship they had. And I think Mary Magdalene knows rebirth. She knows dying and rebirth. And after that, I guess she was exiled to France. So there's an aspect of exile which I didn't go into in this talk. So if you're feeling on the fringe, if you're feeling pushed out of society, Mary Magdalene is your girl. Like, she's the one to help you navigate those spaces and keep your power. Yeah, they were the power couple, I feel like. Absolutely. And so she was exiled, and she was exiled while she was pregnant. So she was Jesus was crucified when she was pregnant. And she gave birth to, they say, this is from channeled works again, they gave birth to Sarah. And she's in here. And Sarah is another great teacher of the Queen of the Outsiders, is what she's called in this card, because she was born into exile. And it's like, it doesn't matter where you get exiled to, it doesn't matter how you're betrayed, if you center yourself in love, and I think this will go to Brandy's talk, if you center yourself in love, that's all there is. Like, Elizabeth Gilbert posted that story about her lover talking to the inmates from where she was imprisoned before, and she had just gotten, you know, word that she was dying, and they were opening a library, and so these inmates were there at the ribbon cutting, and she talked to them, And she said that we all are living our different sentences, and that, you know, that's right now their sentence is in prison, but her sentence was death. And we're all living different sentences. And she told them, who you are is in here, like, not the walls of the prison. That's not where you live. And that's not, the jumpsuit isn't who you are. And your, you know, your rap sheet isn't who you are, but who you are is in here, and where you live is in the mind. And I think that's the same with what Mary Magdalene would have endured and what her daughter would have endured, is if you stay present to the heart and know who you are without anyone labeling you, then that is power and sovereignty. And it's not going to matter if you know who you are and you live in here, and you're in control of here. So if you don't like what you see living in your mind, you can change your mind, obviously, especially if you have Joe Dispenza to help you. So lots of books on that. So before we get into the activation, I just want to, oh, what are you lost on, Colette? I think you can unmute if you wanted to say something.
Mm-hmm.
I'll unmute you. There. Okay, Colette, what are you lost on?
I'm like, how do I do that?
I'll do it for you.
I think I've just been alone too much. So when you're alone too much, you get caught up in your thoughts, right? And a lot of your thoughts, my understanding is that 90% of them don't serve you because they're not real.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But you've tied an emotion to it.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes it real. So you stay stuck in a replay.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I am.
Ah, okay.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, I get it now. Yeah.
So I'm trying to find a way out of that on my own.
You know, I think that, you know, you're not alone in that. I think this quarantine has locked people into their minds
Mm-hmm.
when they could distract themselves before, and now they can't.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think in a way this quarantine is a beautiful thing to show you, what is your mind doing?
Mm-hmm.
What have you been telling yourself? Where, you know, so that's pretty profound.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a gift. Absolutely. So I'm just gonna, before we get into the activation, I'm just gonna give you a little background on my story with Mary Magdalene and how I received her. I don't actually know when it started, but what I do know is she started showing up for me in different ways. I got, you know, a course on her, and I started listening to it, and there was always a vibration around her when she was talked about in Catholic school, even as a kid. I just didn't quite buy the story they were trying to tell me, even as a child. And I was curious about her. I was really curious about her. And so she's got this magnetic energy. And when I downloaded Goddess Reiki, or the information for that, it came from somewhere. And when I went to the psychic for my 36th birthday, she told me that I came in with one of the Marys. And I said, oh, and I knew because I bought the singing bowl that was Mary Magdalene energy. I had been receiving downloads on the goddess, and she had a Christian tarot deck, and she pulled it out, and at the bottom it said Magdalene. And she goes, this is the Mary that I'm talking about. And she said, that Mary is who gave you Goddess Reiki. And it gave me chills. Like, it was all so profound, because she had just been popping into my life in different ways, via email, via, you know, people mentioning her. Like, she just would pop up everywhere. I got the Magdalene manuscript, and you know, like, it just kind of was all by itself on a shelf one day, and I was like, all right, I'm supposed to have that. And so I read Magdalene manuscript. And yeah, she just had popped in various ways and almost like wanting me to know her true story. And so I feel very close to this energy of her. I always have. I think of her all the time. She's been on my altar even before I started taking a course on her. She's been on my altar probably since 2013, because she came to me in a Dorian Virtue deck. How hilarious is that? So she came out of a Dorian Virtue deck, and that card has been on my altar since 2013. So I just feel her watching over me all the time, and I'm very connected to her energy. And I love the liminal spaces. I love the in-between. It's gritty and it's on the fringe, and there's so much unknown in those spaces that you can create whatever you want. And yeah, it affects people because they want neat, tidy boxes sometimes, and that's not the way it's going to be. So anyway, I think she's a really great one to take with you in this new earth that we're creating. And I'm just going to stop talking now and let the activation do its work. I'm going to have to stop sharing and share a different screen with you. Now, Brandy, do you want to say a little bit about where this meditation came from?
Sure. So I actually started, was this free course from the Priestess Presence. And it just happened to be, I was actually trying to look for where that came from, because that's not actually in my folder. Couldn't find it, but in this course that I had taken, the Magdalene code activation was actually there. So it is crazy powerful. There is light language in there. It was, so that's why I was like, oh yeah, it popped in my head. So I shared it with Sam, and that's the one that we are going to use today. What I'll do also is put the link on our page. So if you guys decide that, you want to do it again or listen to it more, whatever, because each time it will be powerful, then at least you have it. So.
And amazing. Thank you for sharing that with us, Brandy. And also, it is 11 o'clock right now, so I just want you to know that this will be 15 minutes. And then Brandy has some things to say that are profound as well before we end. So we might probably go till, I would say, 11:30, possibly 11:45. So if you have to jet, that's okay too. It's recording. Otherwise, if you can hang out with us, hang out with us. You're okay with that, right, Bran? Time-wise?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
All right.
I do believe, let me know, can you guys hear this? So you just want us to close our eyes? Yeah, we're all good. Okay.
Yeah.
Close our eyes. Okay. And the
just feel it wash over you.
Okay. And the volume's good for everyone?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Maru ishtarach, ishtarachtus, merashtea, oshtamana, ulmachte ishtara, inchanshu, shemai, shemai, shemai.
Anna Maria.
Okay, so just take a couple deep breaths and give yourself the gift of observation and witnessing and noticing where that's landing in your body. And when you feel ready, just blink your eyes open. Maybe just shake your hands a little bit and your wrists. Very cool. Thanks for sharing that with us, Brandy.
Thank you. More than happy to. So going back a little bit to what you ladies were saying about having a hard time connecting. And we have been taught growing up with our religions and whatnot that the divine is separate from us. That it's something to strive to earn the right to it. The typical, if you're good, you're going to go to heaven. If you do wrong, you're going to hell. It even goes so far as to say that if you're not baptized, like that we're born dirty, and that if we're not baptized, then, we're just full of sin and we're never going to get there. And then fast forward a little bit, that we have to accept Jesus into our heart as our savior in order so basically it's teaching us that he's that bridge. So I'm going to ask each of you to take out your pen and paper right now. And I'm going to ask you, what if we told you that you are fully human and fully divine? What shows up for you when I say that? Does it bring up resistance? Does it bring up a knowing that just really resonates with you, I just ask or invite you to jot down for a minute or two how that makes you feel. So now we're going to try and shift that narrative a little bit. And what if I told you that there's a bridge between heaven and earth? And then what if I told you that you are that bridge? How does that make you feel? Where does that sit with you? And you can write that down. So Mary Magdalene wants us to remember that the truest church that we can enter is in our heart. It's where our truest power rests and where love never ends. Where the fierce, unwavering love that all we have to have access to in our vulnerable hearts lives. So speaking from the heart, choosing to walk as love in all moments, each day, all the way, which is sometimes difficult. Even when somebody is frustrating us, or maybe it's, especially now with being stuck at home and we don't have that quiet time or that freedom, right? It's definitely a moment to be able to connect inwards and say, oh, right, I need to come at this, I guess, from love, instead of the total anger and frustration or whatever we might be feeling at the moment, which also brings us to self-love. So how can we honor both our human selves and our divine selves? And how can we own our power in between? So taking a look at my question to you is, where are you making yourself small? And when I say small, I mean that you're less important than anybody else in your house, maybe less important than your job, uh, that kind of thing with friends, however. And how can we recognize this in the moment so that we can shift this? How can we bring our importance, our human self and divine self all like into alignment and really own our sovereign power and say, hey, you know what? I deserve this. And then what have you been doing, especially now, like with the COVID time, to refill your cup? We're all in houses, many with us with quite a few people, which makes almost no quiet time. What do you do for quiet and inner connection? And for those of us that are in quieter homes where we're feeling disconnected and alone, what have you been doing for your self-care? Have you been reaching out to more people? Have you been going inwards? What does that look like for you? And then the question too is, what do you need for yourself? What do you need from yourself? And what do you need from other people? And how can you ask for that? So for this next week, your homework is, I want you to choose one thing a day to honor your divine and human self. Whether it's a walk outside in the sun, or maybe the rain, because we're supposed to have rain and snow again. A goddess bath, right? Like throw petals.
I'll post a sacred bath recipe from that book for Mary Magdelene.
Perfect. Sitting and just reading a book, like grab a tea or a coffee, throw some Baileys in if you really want to, and just take that time for yourself, as long as it's for you to feel the divine feminine coming to life within you. So that's for this week.
Can I offer a suggestion for Brandy's homework? If you're like, I don't know, and like sometimes you're in such a funk that you're like, yeah, I like tea, but like whatever, you know. You know, do you know that? Like,
get
in your own way of your own self-care. I'm sure we've all been there. So I want to invite you to take a little leap this week, a real leap, okay? And I want you to grab some coconut oil or skin-friendly oil that speaks to you, maybe grapeseed, I don't know. And what I've learned is you can find pleasure in the darkest moments. And it takes some grit. You have to like force yourself to lock the door and not let people bug you. And even when you don't feel like it, so this has been my practice, even when you don't feel like it, invite pleasure in. So I want you this week, at least one day, because you get to choose, but the one day I don't want you to get to choose, I want you to do this thing, is I want you to get coconut oil and I want you to get your favorite music, that like goddessy sensual music, and I want you to start just rubbing oil on your skin and just play with the touch and how the fingertips go and all of that. And I just want you to have a session with yourself, and whether that goes into self-pleasuring in other areas, feel free. You have a vulva, you know how to use one. And like whatever works for you, but I want you to pleasure yourself one day. And even if it just stops at like rubbing your skin with oil, I don't care. If you want to take it further, because Mary Magdalene lives in the heart, I invite you to do a breast massage. So that's what you would take is coconut oil. It can be done over the clothes too. Like if you're like in a really busy house, you don't like you could even do it in your sacred bath, but you're going to take your fingers and you're going to rub them down the outside and inhale them coming up through the center. So you're going that way first for a couple minutes, and you're really using your breath, like really like, and what this does is it gets massages the lymphatic system. It brings you closer to that love vibration. If you're like, I don't even know what my heart feels like, I don't know how Mary Magdalene's here, this is going to bring that up for you. And then, so after a couple minutes of going around like this, then you go from the inside, middle, down and up around the outside. If you've had breast cancer or anything, any ailments like that, you don't do this part of it. But if you've had healthy breasts up until this point, yeah, like go ahead, go down the center and up around. And then at the end, I want you to cup yourself, and then you just kind of like jiggle, because what that does is it brings the lymphatic, I know that seems weird, like you're just jiggling yourself, but like it actually brings the lymphatic fluid throughout your body. So you do want to do that shaking aspect at the end. So yeah, rub yourself with coconut oil this week and do the breast massage, because that, I'm getting the message right now that that's where you're going to tap into Mary Magdalene, and you're going to see that you can find pleasure in the shittiest moments. You can find pleasure when your mind isn't, and it changes everything. It changes your whole vibration, your whole frequency. So that I want you to do this week once out of the 7 days. Okay? If you want to do it more, go for it. All right. So I'm just gonna unmute all of you. Let me know, unless Sarah, you're loud. No, you're fine. Okay.
Yeah.
Sweet. Trying to mute all of you. Oh, now I've muted Sarah. That's not what I wanted. Oh my goodness. Settle down, Zoom. Okay. So does anyone have any questions about this week? How did the activation and the thoughts go in your journal?
I was actually stuck initially when prompted, and I was like, oh no, like I don't know where to start. But then after a moment, it just kind of flowed really fast, and
Amazing.
yeah, so
Was
that was
there,
unexpected.
do you have any aha moments there?
Not really. Maybe like once I look back on it, but definitely like basically I wrote that I grew up feeling disconnected and on the outside and not knowing why, and not understanding like not understanding why I was an outsider and why I was questioning everything, because the few times that I actually went to church with my family as a kid, I always had questions, and I was always met with, that's just how it is. There was no, like, you weren't allowed to ask questions, you weren't allowed to know, you weren't allowed to, especially as a kid, like,
Think for yourself.
yeah. And I remember actually being asked not to come back to the Sunday school as a kid.
Oh my.
So like, and then I just wrote about that, and then like how just starting to feel more comfortable with my femininity and realizing that my sexuality is my power and it's okay. And if I look back, I've always been told no by people who themselves were told no growing up. And basically being controlled.
Mhm.
And yeah, so it just kind of like ended up flowing. And then I was like, oh, don't know where that came from.
Well, this is why we're friends, Sarah, because I had the same kind of thing. Nobody likes you asking them questions.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I remember in high school, I just about didn't graduate because I was being such a brat in religion, and I refused to do the homework because I was said I'd had enough with contradiction, and I said, you told us not to interpret the Bible literally, so why are you asking me literal questions on the Bible? And my teacher just said, just do it, Sam. And I'm like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm so sick of the contradictions. And then eventually they're like, you need religion to graduate and you're failing. So I need to take up an extra, project. What was that, Colin?
Did you fake it so you could
Right.
graduate?
I had to do a separate project that didn't even have to do with religion, which I didn't quite understand. So I did like a visual communications project, and then they let me graduate. So, yeah.
I was thinking, oh, that's my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was thinking was, I agree with everything that Sarah said. Asking questions all the time at church and in the Catholic school, and never getting any answers, and feeling very disconnected from it. And one thing that I felt, the reason I felt disconnected, and I kind of discovered that when Brandy was asking those questions, is that we were never told that it came from inside us. We were always told that it was outer. And I think we grew up as,
Yeah.
It's really in our brain that we were taught that. And so it's kind of been a journey to change that around and do the inner stuff, the heart.
Yeah.
And also with heaven and earth, like we were taught that's outside of us. Heaven's outside of us. And so those kinds of disconnections that we've had to work with.
Which is kind of like too, because like Jesus even actually had said, pick up a rock. I am underneath there. So,
Yes, I
right?
forgot about that.
So he literally was saying that God, or the divine, we'll say the divine because God makes it sound very only masculine. The divine is everywhere, and we would not exist without the divine. We are part of
said that you were made in the image and likeness of God. So like,
yeah.
Where did that get missed?
And you had to always go to the priest.
Yeah.
To get to heaven. It was never your own stuff to go to, to get
well, and look at the J-dubs. Like, they have to have how many people before they can get to heaven? They have to convert. They have to basically be salesmen before they can get to heaven. A lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Brainwash.
Yeah. Okay.
Colette,
yeah. Do you guys have anything else to say, Colette? No?
I have lots to say.
You have to say?
So during the meditation part, I kept seeing purple and gold in the shape of an eye, and the striations of the eye, like the lines,
The iris type
of the eye, and it just kept going woo and woo like this. And then I saw a face a couple of times. A face kept coming. Like it was really kind of crazy. And of course, my third eye goes bonkers when we do this kind of stuff. So that's there. And as far as religion is concerned, because I've always been a seeker, I I've kind of looked into all kinds of different religions. I wasn't raised in a religion, so I don't have the same kind of
Brainwashing.
bossiness of a Catholic religion, and like I don't get that.
Oh, my
I've never had
background
that
is messed up
association. Yeah, like, so I'm just kind of like, I was always searching. So that landed me with the Jehovah's Witnesses, which most of you know. And even when I was learning that, and even when I was going to First Steps to Success with Danny Johnson, because she's super crazy, like Baptist, like, I'm going to heal you and bang, like, you know, like just total craziness. I've always felt that what I was learning about the divine wasn't actually right. Like I always had that, this doesn't feel good. Like, and I tried to make it feel good. And then I felt sad because I didn't.
Well, and then you feel wrong, right?
Yeah.
You feel
like I felt like I was going to go to hell because I wasn't, you know, I wasn't buying in to the whole thing. And they don't even have hell in Jehovah's Witnesses, which I find very interesting, which I don't really believe there is a hell. And if there is, we're living on it right now.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you know, I've always felt like that always brought me back to the connection has to be within. It has to be, because there's so many people always searching, right? And unfortunately, some people just land in a religion and they stay there instead of continuing the search. So I've always felt that the divine has always been within, that I could always be connected. You know, it's always more powerful when you're in a group of people, of course, because that just brings more energy, right? And then I'll do the self-care. Yeah. That's all I have to say. That's it.
That's amazing. Thank you, everyone. This felt very powerful. I think you're gonna have a powerful week, and you can add a Mary Magdalene trinket or crystal or whatever. Anoint your candles with oil on her behalf, and add it to your altar. You know, you don't have to redo your whole altar unless you really want to, but you could put an image of her or a crystal representing her, or you know, a heart. Like we're working a lot with the heart today, so like just a heart could represent her, or you could put frankincense on a candle or joy on a candle, whatever, you know. So add some Mary Magdalene flavor to your altar this week, and I'm so grateful you're all here and doing this journey with us. Brandy, that was spectacular. Thank you for guiding us through that bridge. I keep hearing the witch tenet, as above, so below. So yeah. Anyway, I'm really excited to hear about how you guys pleasure yourself and fill your cups, and it's going to be a really delicious week, and I am so excited.
Yes, me too.
Okay, well, I love you all, and I will see you soon.
Love you too.
Reach out if you need to, and I'll post what I said I was going to post in the Facebook page. So, yeah. All right.
Me too.
Have a good weekend. Bye.
Bye.